There is a moment in certain football matches when the whole world quietly agrees that it's over. One team is 2 or 3 goals up, the clock is ticking down, the losing side's heads have dropped, and the commentators start talking about what went wrong. And then, sometimes, something impossible happens. The dead team stands back up. We just saw a flash of it at the 2026 World Cup, when England found themselves behind against a fearless Democratic Republic of Congo in what was called the most dramatic match of the entire tournament, before Harry Kane dragged them back from the brink to win it 2-1. It was breathless. And yet, in the grand history of the World Cup, that's barely a warm-up. Because this tournament has produced comebacks so absurd, so gloriously impossible, that they rewired what every football fan believes is even possible. These are the greatest comebacks in World Cup history. The nights a team was dead and buried, and simply refused to stay in the grave. Let's get one thing straight first. A 2-goal lead is famously the most dangerous lead in football, because the team in front relaxes, drops deeper, invites pressure, and starts protecting what they have instead of chasing more. And once the momentum turns, once belief creeps into one side and panic into the other, a scoreline that looked utterly safe can collapse in minutes. The World Cup, the biggest stage of all, is where that psychology has produced pure magic. So, let's count them down. Start in 1966, with the single most jaw-dropping first hour the World Cup had ever seen. The quarterfinal, Portugal, one of the tournament favorites, against North Korea, a tiny, unknown, part-time team who were only there as the ultimate underdogs, and who had already shocked the planet by knocking out Italy. And in the first 20-odd minutes of that quarterfinal, the unthinkable happened again. North Korea didn't just score. They went 3-0 up. 3-0. The entire footballing world was watching the biggest humiliation in the sport's history unfold in real time. One of the giants of Europe, about to be dumped out by a team nobody had even heard of a month earlier. And then one man decided it would not happen. His name was Eusébio, the greatest player in that tournament. And what he did next is the stuff of legend. He scored. Then he scored again. Then again. And again. 4 goals, dragging Portugal almost single-handedly from 3-0 down to a 5-3 win. One of the greatest individual performances the World Cup has ever witnessed, turning the most embarrassing afternoon imaginable into one of the most glorious. Now spin forward to 2018 for what might be the most dramatic single comeback the modern game has produced. Belgium against Japan in the round of 16. Belgium were the golden generation, the favorites. Japan were not supposed to lay a glove on them. And with just over 20 minutes left, Japan were 2-0 up and cruising towards one of the great upsets. Belgium looked finished. Then it started. A looping, almost freakish header from Jan Vertonghen dropped in to make it 2-1. Moments later, the substitute Marouane Fellaini rose to head in the equalizer. 2-2, and Japan were reeling. But the moment that made it immortal came in the very last seconds of the game. Japan won a corner, chasing a winner of their own, and Belgium's keeper caught it and launched the single most devastating counterattack in World Cup history. 4 passes, one end of the pitch to the other, in about 10 seconds, ending with another substitute, Nasser Chadli, sliding the ball into an empty net with the last kick of the match. From a Japanese corner to a Belgian winner in the blink of an eye, the Japanese players collapsed, face down on the grass. It was the first time since 1966 that a team had come from 2 goals down to win a World Cup knockout in 90 minutes. And it remains, arguably, the cruelest and most beautiful comeback the tournament has ever seen. But if you want the biggest, most historically enormous comeback of them all, you have to go all the way back to 1954, and a game so shocking it earned its own name, the Miracle of Bern. Picture the scene. Hungary were not just good, they were the greatest team on the planet, the mighty Magyars, unbeaten in over 30 consecutive matches, a side so dominant they had already thrashed West Germany 8-3 in the group stage of that very tournament. This was the most one-sided final anyone could imagine. And sure enough, Hungary raced into a 2-0 lead inside the first 8 minutes. game over. Except it wasn't. West Germany, a nation still rebuilding from the devastation of war, refused to fold. They clawed one back, then leveled it, and then, in the 84th minute, a man named Helmut Rahn struck the winner. 3-2. The unbeatable team, beaten in the biggest game of all, from 2 goals down. It is remembered not just as a football comeback, but as a moment that lifted an entire country off its knees. And 1954, it turns out, was simply the year of the impossible. In the same tournament, in a quarterfinal against Switzerland, Austria went 3-0 down inside the first 23 minutes, and answered by scoring 3 goals in barely 3 minutes, before eventually winning a completely deranged, end-to-end classic, 7-5. To this day, it is still the highest-scoring match in World Cup history. 12 goals, a 3-goal hole climbed out of. Total chaos. Some tournaments just have magic in the water. And then there is the one that many are already calling the greatest final ever played. Argentina against France, 2022. For over 75 minutes, this wasn't a contest. It was a coronation. Argentina were 2-0 up. Lionel Messi was finally getting his World Cup, and France, the defending champions, had been utterly abysmal. It looked done. And then, Kylian Mbappé happened. 2 goals in 97 absolutely insane seconds, a penalty, and then a stunning volley. And out of nowhere, from 2-0 down and dead on their feet, France were level. In extra time, Messi scored again to make it 3-2, surely the end. And Mbappé, again, answered with a penalty to complete his hat trick. The first hat trick in a World Cup final since 1966. 3-3. France had come back not once but twice from the grave in the biggest game on earth. Argentina eventually won it on penalties, and Messi got his crowning glory. But it was France's refusal to die that turned a final into the greatest match the tournament has ever produced. So what do all of these nights have in common? Every single one of them turns on the same thing. The exact moment that one team stops believing the scoreboard, and one player decides the story isn't finished. It was Eusébio in '66, refusing to be humiliated. It was Rahn in '54, and 2 unlikely substitutes in 2018, and Mbappé in 2022. There's always a spark, a header that shouldn't have gone in, a substitution that changes everything, a superstar who simply takes the game by the throat. And once that spark catches, the team that thought it had already won suddenly can't stop the fire. Comebacks are not really about tactics. They're about belief arriving in one dressing room at the exact instant it drains out of the other. And there is a heartbreaking flip side to all of this too. Sometimes the comeback is absolutely magnificent, and still isn't quite enough. France, in 2022, produced one of the great fightbacks the sport has ever seen, and still lost the final on penalties. West Germany, in the 1986 final, hauled themselves back from 2-0 down against Maradona's Argentina to make it 2-2, only for Argentina to score again and win it 3-2. The comeback doesn't always get its storybook ending, but even when it falls agonizingly short, it hands us the very same gift: living proof that no lead, however comfortable it looks, is ever truly safe. And that is exactly why the World Cup is the most watchable sporting event on the planet, because you never, ever know. We are seeing it again right now in 2026. An England side dragged back from the edge, knockout games swinging on single moments, teams that were written off refusing to go quietly. Every time a side goes 2 goals up in this tournament, somewhere in the back of their mind is the ghost of North Korea, of Japan, of Hungary, of that Argentina lead, all the teams who were absolutely certain the game was won, right up until the moment it wasn't. That is the quiet terror sitting underneath every knockout game, the knowledge that the other team only needs one spark, one crazy header, one substitution, one moment of genius, and suddenly the safest night of your life becomes the worst. So here is the one rule the World Cup never stops teaching us, the rule that keeps 1 billion people glued to their screens until the very last second of every single match. the scoreboard lies. A 2-goal lead is not a cushion, it's a dare. And somewhere in this tournament, on some unforgettable night, a team that the entire world has already buried is going to climb out of the grave and remind all of us why we can never bring ourselves to switch it off early. Because at the World Cup, it is never, ever over until it's over.